Hey there everyone! In today's Matplotlib tutorial on the Future Programmer YouTube channel, we're going to talk about how we can draw multiple smaller plots in one figure using something called subplots. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Using Matplotlib, we can graph multiple subplots in one figure, for example, side by side or one subplot above another. This can all be done using the subplot function supplied by pyplot module. So let's import matplotlib.pyplot as plt just like usual. The second line right here is just going to increase the plotting resolution and make our graphs higher resolution, higher quality. plt.subplot is going to require three numbers: the number of rows in the figure, the number of columns in the figure, and the position of the current plot. Before we talk about this, let's first take a look at an example. The code right here is going to create a figure with one row and two columns, so a total of two subplots plotted side by side. We have a list of x, and here we're plotting x against itself, so it will create a positively sloped line. And here we're plotting it reversed, so we're plotting a negatively sloped line with these same numbers. The important things here, the important lines here are line 3 and line 6. We can see that plt.subplot are both being called in both cases. So the first time we're passing in three parameters, 1, 2, and 1. This is the number of rows in our figure. This is the number of columns in our figure. So what that is telling us is we have one row and two columns. So one row, and we have a column on the left and a column on the right. The last number here is going to be the index, the position of the plot that is plotted right here. So 1 means it's the plot on the left. So everything starts at 1 here. In this case, it doesn't start at 0, it starts at 1. And the smaller the number, the closer it is to the top left. So the top left is going to have an index of 1, and then 2, 3, 4, and so on. The second plot right here is going to be at position 2. So this is going to be plotted on the right subplot. And you can see this is indeed the case after I call plt.show as usual. There are two ways to specify the arguments with plt.subplot, the first of which you have already seen. So plt.subplot 1, 2, 1 is going to have one row, two columns, and we're plotting at position 1. This is equivalent. The second way of doing this is equivalent. So this is actually going to be doing the exact same thing as this. But instead of passing in three separate arguments, we're passing in one argument. And I don't mean a list of three numbers or a tuple of three numbers. I mean literally one number, 121, an integer of 3 digits. The first digit is going to be the number of rows. And then the second digit is going to be the number of columns. And lastly, the third digit is going to be the index. And this will only work if you have less than 10 plots, because as soon as you go to 10 plots, then you can't pass in 10 as one digit. So you have to use this format right here. This is probably easier to understand anyway. But you'll see both formats being used in different people's code. So that's a good thing to be aware of. This code right here is going to create two subplots, one above another. So we just got to change the input to the subplot function calls. So instead of 1, 2, 1, we have 2, 1, 1 and 2, 1, 2. So we have two rows, one above another. We have one column, and this one is going to plot this on the top subplot. This is going to specify that this is going to be on the bottom subplot. And we can see we have indeed the positive line above the negatively sloped line. And of course, we can have more than just two subplots in one figure. Now, just like I just said, we have to have the syntax with 3 arguments if we have more than 9. So here we have a for loop iterating between 1 and 9. And we have plt.subplot 3, 3, so a 3 by 3 grid. And we're passing in the index as the looping variable I. We're plotting a line with the x values being between 0 and 9. And then we have a list, which is basically x multiplied by the slope being the looping variable I. And then we're setting the x and y limits. Now the plt.type layout is very helpful sometimes with adjusting subplot parameters automatically so that our subplots fit in the figure more cleanly. So if I comment this out and run this code, we can see that everything still works. It's just everything looks a little bit overlapped. These numbers are overlapping with the other subplots. Now if I uncomment this line right here, we can see everything is a lot cleaner, a lot nicer here. So we have a total of 9 subplots, 3 by 3. And we can see the line is indeed growing steeper and steeper as we go to the last plot. We can, as usual, set properties like titles, legends, and more, just like we normally would. So here we have a total of 3 subplots. Notice how we have plt.subplot 211, and then we have 223. What that is telling us, first of all, we skipped 212 or 222. We don't have an index of 2. We just have 1, 3, and then we have 4. So what this is telling us is we have a subplot right here that is going to be 2 rows, 1 column, 1. If I plot this, you'll see that this top subplot is going to take up the entirety of the 2 columns, because this is actually considered 1 column. It's just that after these 2 are called, now we have 2 columns. So we're splitting the bottom half of our plot into 2 columns, whereas the top one only has 1 column. So the trigonometric functions graph is going to take up both of these columns. Anyway, let's talk about the legends and titles and such. So before now, we've only been plotting one graph into one subplot. But we can plot, first of all, more than one. We can plot as many plots as we want into one subplot. We can also add legends, as you can see here. We can add titles, as you can see here. We can also do things such as plotting histograms. We can create pie charts, just like usual. And we can just call plt.show, and everything will show up nicely. The important thing to know is that you can think about these subplot function calls as kind of breakpoints. Everything between this line right here and this line right here, all of these fall under this, under line 5, this subplot right here, this one. Everything between this line and this line, so all of these will fall under the subplots specified here. And same with this, since this is, well, the last one. So this is the last subplot. The last thing that we're going to talk about is adding something called a subtitle to a figure. This is a kind of a centered title for all of these subplots. Before now, this title right here just applies to this histogram. And this title right here just applies to this pie chart. But if we have a figure with multiple subplots, it's usually because they're related in some way. So we can add a super title, a title for the entire figure for all of the different subplots using the subtitle function. So this subtitle function is going to take the same as usual. We pass in a string, and this will be the title for the entire graph. So we have a smaller title for the sine graph, we have one for the cosine graph, and then we have sine and cosine as the overall title for the entire figure. So hopefully this video has been helpful in teaching you how to use subplots using Matplotlib. That's it for this video on Matplotlib subplots. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. If you found this video to be educational, please consider subscribing down below and giving this video a thumbs up to support this channel. With that said, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in more programming tutorials.